Hello.
See, here we go.
Hi.
Hello. All right. See, we can figure out technology, and so can all the other people out there.
It takes a moment.
Exactly. Well, I'm pretty excited, and I have a feeling you're going to say you're super pumped.
I'm super pumped, Jen.
Super pumped to start our first official podcast where we get to just literally speak to each other and have a fun conversation and hope that a few people listen to us, right?
Yes, thanks for hopping on. Anybody that's here with us. Woohoo.
Right. Thanks for sharing your time with us. And before we even get this kind of fun adventure for us started, we wanted to take a couple of minutes because some of you that are listening, I hope that you've never met us before and that you joined us, but a little bit about who I am. My name is Jennifer Hopson, and I have actually known Christie Palermo for 25 years. I think 20, maybe even longer than 25 years. We got to grow up together in a tiny little town in Rhode Island called Barville. If any of you Barvillians are listening today, we appreciate you as always. But a little bit about me. I grew up in Rhode Island. Then for a while, I got to move around to New York and New Jersey, and that is where I met my wonderful husband, Beau. And now we have two tiny humans. We have two little boys. My first son is 7, and I guess he's a new baby, right, Christy? He's kind of new.
Yeah, he's still new.
He's still pretty fresh. He just turned a year in November. So I have definitely a mom life. I have the life of an entrepreneur. I am in the top 2% of an amazing network marketing company that I have been a part of for a little over 5 years. And that's actually how Christy and I rekindled our friendship, is by joining together in business, which is still kind of crazy when I sit and think about it. But I'm excited to bring to you with our new podcast called Happy, Healthy, and Skeptical. And yes, if you know us, I am the skeptical one, as always. And Christy is the happy one, and we're excited to bring you, different points of views and thoughts and just things that we do. But I want to throw it on over to Christy so she can introduce herself.
Yes, thanks for joining us, guys. And yeah, I'm Christie Palermo, and also grew up in small town Rhode Island. So yeah, Jen and I think it's had to have been about 25 years, which is crazy. Jen and I both were dancers growing up. So I was remembering last night how we used to get our friends together for talent shows, and her and I would choreograph things for our friends. And we started working together back then. That was like 20 years ago,
Yeah, that was our first job.
Our first jobs together. And even then it was funny because we had that balance of I'm like the ice cream and sprinkles, and Jen's like the I'm gonna give it to you straight person. So we really balance each other out great, which is why we really wanted to jump into something like this and getting a podcast started. But yeah, so I was dancer and performer on cruise ships and traveling around the world and doing circus and aerial arts and all the things, clowning even, for a long time. And so I was all over the place. And then I settled down. I met my husband on a cruise ship, and we settled in New York. And then we later moved to Florida. So now we're down in Boca Raton, and we have 2 littles as well. Ours are 3 and 1.5, and we have another on the way due in May. So that's
crazy. We are absolutely outnumbered at this point, Christy.
Yes, we are totally outnumbered. But we're just gonna go with it. I'm one of 3, so I'm like, all right, well, my mom did it, so
right. It'll be great. It will be great. It will be challenging and great.
Exactly. So we're excited and feeling good right now. And and these days I'm living the entrepreneurial life too. Like Jen, like she mentioned, we're in business together, which has been such a fun ride, because now I've been in almost 5 years, or just 5 years, just this week. Actually, 5 years for my
I think it was yesterday. Yesterday was your 5-year anniversary. That's really exciting.
Yes. So we've been doing this for 5 years together, which is fun. But it's just been an awesome ride to be able to do all this with Jen, and having grown up together. And then, life just happens. And then we reconnected 5 years ago, and it was like, no time had gone between us.
Yeah, exactly. And I just feel like we had, well, I don't even really want to say we had been talking about it, but you many times had said we need to do a podcast together. And I kind of looked at you a little skeptical, like, yeah, sure, that's something we'll do. We'll do that at some point. And I feel like there's so many things in life, if most people can relate, that you're saying you're going to do these things, but you feel like you have to be at a certain place in your life before you're allowed to do them, right? Like you have to get to that gate before someone says, all right, you can come in now. You're allowed to do these things. And that's really not the case, right? We talked yesterday and we finally said, let's do this. And now we're making it happen. So if there's something out there you feel like you're not qualified to do, and I did put that this is a little bit explicit on here, but that's bullshit. You're qualified to do it if you're willing to try.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
I know, and I love that we're kicking off our first one right at the new year and getting into things that you want to do, goals, and yeah, I mean, we had been talking about a podcast just kind of very casually for over a year now, but yeah, it's been on my mind. I knew we wanted to do this, and then Jen, you know, being the great friend that she is, she was just like, okay, let's do this, and I was like, all right, okay.
Right. And it's funny because that's definitely the dynamic of who we are. I like to think I'm an idea person, but Christy has these big visual crazy dreams and they're fun, right? They're fun to talk about. And I'm the analytical person, like, how do we make it happen? What do we need? What are the tools that we need? And I think that's what makes our dynamic so special.
Mm-hmm.
So
Absolutely.
I'm pretty excited. What we really wanted to accomplish is to make a safe space, like make a space where you know that there's someone out there like you, whether or not we have the absolute same opinion. You know, there are other mothers out there, and guys, that is the hardest job I think there is for me. And it might be different for other people, but it can be challenging for me. And you know, we wanted to talk about being happy and healthy, and Christy and I were actually connecting just before we started this, and it's the idea of, I think happy is a feeling, right? You might be like, are you happy? You ask someone if they're happy. And I think that's a challenging question because you can't be happy all of the time. You have to create your own happiness, and happiness happens in moments and feelings. And really, the question we should be asking is, am I happy most of the time? And what have I done to create my own happiness and not relying on other people to make us happy? What do you really think about that, Christy?
Yeah, I mean, especially being the person that's really my whole life, not just you saying it, but people always saying, Christy's the happy one, like always. But
Mm-hmm.
I'm not always happy. Like that is just
Right.
the truth and the way of it. And I don't wake up super excitable. I wake up and I have to do certain things every day. And so that was part of what we wanted to talk about today too, is like Jen saying, not that it's not inherent all the time, you know, so we sometimes have to take steps, and there are things that have worked for Jen and I, to have to get ourselves on track some days, and the happiness isn't just always there, but it definitely does take work, and intentional work, and some of the things I do, like I've been journaling for probably 15 years, and it's not even every day, you know, most days I do, but there are days that it doesn't happen, and those are days I could tell they're a little harder because I didn't quite get my mindset right in the morning. But it just gives me a chance to like get out the white noise out of my head. I had a professor in college tell us that once, and that stuck with me. It's a chance to just get all the noise out of your head, or first thing in the morning before you look at your phone or anything. And that works for me. You know, everybody has their thing that works for them. For me, it's just one page, just get it all out. And then I like to read, and Jen and I are both avid readers, and we have our lists of books that we go for each year. And so reading in the morning, at least 10 pages is like a non-negotiable to also get your mindset right. So leadership books and self-development and different things. And so what I'm reading right now that I was excited to talk about is Courage to Soar. And it's by Simone Biles, the gymnast, Olympic gymnast. I think all of us know who she is. And so her story and the struggle, and of course that it wasn't just wake up one day and she's an incredible gymnast. It was a lot of heartache and trials and dedicated time and sacrificing other things in life to get to her goals. And I find that so motivating. So Jen, what are you reading right now?
Well, before I share what I'm reading, what I want to touch on a couple things is it's funny that you say, I'm not happy all the time because I know a lot of people that know you in our community and they're like, Christie's so happy. And I think even my default is Christie is the smiliest, she is the warmest. And when I really actually stopped and thought about it last night, it's not necessarily that you're the happiest person I know, but you lead with kindness. And I think that's what sometimes we kind of get jumbled up, that kind people are happy. And that's not necessarily true. I just think if you're leading with being kind, that is going to make people happy around you, right? It's the feeling you give them by being kind. So I just wanted to kind of say that because it's funny to hear you say, I don't always wake up happy, yet I always think of Christy with a smile.
And
So
that's actually funny. I'm glad you bring that up and make that point because I actually never thought of it that way, that it's the kindness and leading with that, because that's my personality and that's natural, is to just lead with that, but it doesn't always mean I'm happy. So that is a very interesting point that I
yeah,
thought of it
yeah.
that way.
Well, and I think that's what makes our dynamic interesting. And I have to say, for those of you that don't know us, I have grown a lot, and Christy can probably attest to this in the last few years, and I've learned a lot by really including Christy in my circle, right, and including her in the people I surround myself with. I believe I've gotten a little kinder. Is there still a whole lot of work to do? Sure. But I think at the heart of it, it's hard to be kind because you have to be vulnerable, right? And that's something that's difficult for a lot of us to do. I don't know about you.
Yes. It's not always easy, that's for sure.
No, it's definitely not always easy, but I will definitely have to put Simone Biles' book on my list. For me, right now, I'm actually reading Rule Your Day by Joel Osteen. And, that little skeptical part of me, I know there's a lot of people that are connected to their faith, right? And that's super important to them. And really identifying your relationship with faith. So sometimes when I pick up a book like Rule Your Day, this is where that vulnerability and openness, because a lot of what's being written is connected to their relationship with God, right? And I think that has always been a gray and sometimes uncomfortable place for me to be. So I want to encourage you, if you're not a reader, just try reading one book this year. And I want to also encourage you to read something that's a little bit out of your comfort zone, because seeing something from someone else's perspective, I truly think is one of the hardest things that you can choose to do, but it's also one of the best things you can do for yourself and really the people around you.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and there was a book that I read recently. I can't even remember which book it was in, that he was talking about the amount of work that goes into writing a book, and it's usually from somebody that has studied that topic, whether it be, self-help, self-discipline, habits, or just their story of struggle that they've been through, their life. There's been hours and hours and hours and thousands of hours that go into that. So reading one book, like, you really can gain so much knowledge from somebody else's experience in one book, as opposed to sometimes other mediums of getting information, and even blogs and things, like, they still take time to write, but how much more information you can get from a book. And I found that really powerful, because if you read however many books in a year, whatever your goal is, and just set it now, set yourself a goal for the year with how many books you want to read. And it doesn't have to be, if you're not, like Jen said, if you're not a reader, like, don't put 25 books on your, on your list there. Just start reading, and that will make you a reader. And that's literally how you do it. Start with 2 pages in a day, then the next day do 3, or just set a timer. I'm going to read for 10 minutes today, and however many pages that is, that's fine. But just the amount of information you can get from a book, from a person's perspective, can be really eye-opening, which is why I continue to want to read.
Right? Yeah, it can definitely be eye-opening. Like I said, this book is a little out of my norm, so it'll be interesting when I finish it, because I realize, well, there's certain things. Why, when I read this, does that give me that like ick factor, right? Like, why am I uncomfortable reading this? And it allows you to kind of peel back the layers and go, all right, well, where is that coming from, and does that feeling serve me, or is it really holding me back?
That's a really good point, because it makes you kind of stop and dissect, right? Like, why is this emotion coming up for me right now? Obviously, this is something I need to pay attention to.
Right. I need to dig a little deeper to see what's going on there. And who knows what's going on? Maybe it's long forgotten trauma. Maybe it's, kind of I don't know what the word, not unfinished business, but you haven't had closure for something, or maybe it's just something you were told wasn't for you. I think there's so many stories we have about ourselves that we don't really look, and they're not stories we created. It might be something that somebody didn't even intend for us to hear in that way, but it's something we heard and we internalized it and we made it who we are, versus saying, I don't need to be that person. I don't need to feel that way. So why do I?
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's a little crazy. You could do a lot of work reading reading every single day, right?
Yes. Oh my gosh. It's been, I didn't even get to the amount of books I wanted this year, but it's still more than I guess thought at the beginning. So
Right. Well, I want to flip the script a little bit, and I'm excited about the next topic. And we had kind of talked a little bit about this earlier. And for those of you out there, maybe you have done this before. And if you haven't, I want to encourage you to try it. But have you picked your word of the year? This is something Chrissy and I don't know how long Chrissy's been doing it. I know for me, I've been doing it for the last 3 years. To be honest, it wasn't much longer than that. And it's been something that's been very interesting. And I think the process has been more valuable, honestly, for me than the word that I choose. But I want Christy to share, because I know she's already chosen her word of the year, and I'm still in the development process.
yes, and I wanted to just look. I always keep a track of my words of the year, word of the years, and this is my 10th one. I just realized.
Wow.
I did not realize it's been that long.
That's crazy.
It's funny because I remember doing it. I had heard, I don't even know where I first heard word of the year. Maybe it was a podcast or something. I don't even know for sure. But it just made sense because I was in circus school, actually, leaving cruise ships, which I got comfortable with contract after contract, and heading into a complete unknown. I was 28 and heading into the circus world, and, just like, what am I doing? And just needing guidance in my life, and like trying to
Christy,
find.
I don't want to interrupt you. I just have to, for the people listening, she's not saying the actual world, because the world is kind of a circus. I wanted to be very clear. Christy was a clown, and it was amazing to see. She actually went into the circus world. So I just feel like for the listeners out there, I have to be clear. And before we get to the word, you have to share with them what the name of your clown was.
Yes. Oh my gosh. It is true though. Like there are circus schools out there. It's a real thing. I didn't even know about this all my dance life. I got into trapeze on cruise ships, and then I dove into it more and wanted to go train more. So I went and literally moved to Vermont for 2 years and joined a circus school there, New England Center for Circus Arts, which is incredible and run by twins who were in Cirque du Soleil, and now the school is just phenomenal and huge. And so my clown name was Clarice, and I'm not even
Clarice, I love it.
because it's gonna freak people out, but maybe someday we'll introduce her to the world again.
Maybe. I love that. It's just so crazy because a lot of times we compare, the outside grown-up world to being a circus, and you were like, no, F it, I'm gonna go actually join the circus.
Yeah, and I literally did. I ran away to the circus.
That's awesome.
But
all right, I interrupted.
even though it was like I knew that was the next step for me, it was terrifying.
Yeah.
And just kind of one of those jump, take the leap and hopefully the net appears, which it did. And kind of like this, starting a podcast. Hey, let's take the leap and let's see where it goes. Let's see what happens. So that year, I just remember being really kind of lost and like starting to find faith in God. And that was my journey with it. Like I had never had a relationship with God before. And that played a big part of it. So at the time, I have it written down that was in 2014, and I chose the word balance. And so through the last 10 years, I can look at each word and remember think about that year and how every single time I chose a word, I had expectations of what that word would mean for me that year, or things I thought I needed to work on or find. Like at that time, I wanted to find balance with hopefully finding a kind of steady home life with what I was doing. And of course, at the end of the year, you look back and it's like, wow, my journey with this word, because you have to keep it in the forefront of your mind too, like write it down somewhere. I have it on my vision board every year. I always have it kind of in the forefront of my mind that I remind myself my word, so that I'm not like consciously going out and seeking to do that thing, but I'm just reminding myself subconsciously that these are things I want to work on. So, but it's so funny because at the end of every single year, the things that happened on that year gave me that word, brought me to balance for that year or whatever word it was, but in a totally different way I ever expected, and was like, wow, I needed that way more than what I thought I needed for that word.
Yeah.
So this year I already chose, it took me a little time to find it. I knew I wanted to. We are in this past year had moved to Boca Raton, Florida. So I knew I wanted kind of like roots more here. And so I ended up coming up with the word that felt right to me is cultivate. And so that is my word going into 2023, to cultivate and to really find our roots here and find our community, which we're starting to do, but like deep roots and really finding our place there. So but you kind of do have to just take a little time for yourself, like Jen saying she's not quite found the word yet. Sometimes it takes a little time, sometimes it's quick, but maybe do a little journaling on it. That's always helps
Yeah,
me.
Christie's always going to tell me to journal. That's her go-to. But it's interesting for having a personal relationship with you that you chose the word cultivate and that your idea around growing roots and community. Because for those that don't know Christie, I grew up seeing Christie's family and it was a big family, right? And they had deep roots in the community where we grew up. And it just shows that those are the things that you took, even though you're not still in Rhode Island, where you are now is where you want to grow that family and create a new space. And it's hard sometimes. I've moved to states I had never been to before, and just picked up and moved. And it's hard because without a community, we're meant to be around people. Whether or not you're a people person, we are meant to have human interaction. And it's hard, especially as a mom, when the only human interaction you're getting is with tiny people that don't speak in real sentences. Right? You want to kind of have that adult community. So I love that you said cultivate. And here we go back to, Christie's kind of vision and her dreams. And I'm going back to, well, how do you actually find out a word? What are the things you can do? So for me, I actually have steps to this. I just haven't taken them yet. And it's, I usually grab a piece of paper. Yeah, it might not be journaling, but I'm going to write down a lot of words that just come to mind. I do a brain dump. You look at the ones that I've had in the past couple of years and what they've done and what they've meant to me. If they even actually connected. It's interesting. Christie's always match what she's done. Sometimes mine are hit or miss. Sometimes it absolutely was the thing that I accomplished and the thing that really got me through the year. And sometimes it didn't hit because I actually didn't identify the right word. And these aren't going to, totally transform your everyday. But what I can tell you is if you do the work to reflect on your word of the year, that's what's going to take you through the year. Because what it's going to allow you to do is be in alignment with your vision of 2023, which is then in alignment with your daily habits and the word that I'm actually loving and I'm starting to think might be my word of 2023, which is commitments. So I grab a piece of paper, I write down a lot of words, and I kind of review the list. And I take some time to actually think about the things that happened in 2023, what I was able to accomplish, what I said I had wanted to do, and I didn't show up for myself, and the things that I want to do in the next year. And really what it's been for me in the last couple of years is how to serve people. So I look at them all, and I take a lot of time, and I figure out the one that jumps out at me. And there's probably a reason that it's jumping out at me. But so again, Christie takes the big vision. She likes to journal, and I like to take the action steps.
Again, the balance between us.
Yes, exactly. So with the word of the year, I will share mine later, but I love that you said cultivate, Christie. That's a pretty powerful word. And do you feel like it's just with your nuclear family, or is it bigger than that?
Oh, it's definitely bigger than that, because and of course it comes into business and so many layers of it. And every time I pick a word, you find it when it makes you slightly uncomfortable. Not slightly, but pretty uncomfortable.
Pretty
and
uncomfortable. Like, yeah, and it's interesting because you're thousands away of miles away from where you grew up, but I feel like sometimes I'm in a similar situation. After living in New York and Jersey, my husband, I brought him back to where I'm from in New England. He's from New York, so it's not too far away, but we're in a place where neither of us have no connection to this place, right? In the last couple of years, that's been a challenge, is to create a community where you feel safe, but also where you feel connected. Like being connected is a huge thing. And I feel like that's what makes it feel like home. If you don't feel connected to the place that you are, you don't necessarily feel like home. You feel like a visitor. Have you felt like that in
Right.
Boca?
Yes, yes, exactly. And there's like, relationships you start to build that still might seem surface just because you just haven't got to know each other more, and yeah, you don't quite feel uh rooted, I guess is a word that comes
Yeah,
to mind.
yeah, no, I
Until
think that
those
makes sense.
relationships truly become more than
Surface. I feel like
surface.
surface
Yeah,
really,
yeah,
right?
exactly.
Yeah,
That
it's
was,
just like
yeah.
your pleasantries, and I'm sure as usual, you're kind to everybody, right? So it's those pleasantries of how can I develop an actual relationship with this person and this place. Relationships in general, all types of relationships, not just romantic relationships, are definitely a challenge.
Yeah, and I'm finding it's harder and harder as you get older, right?
Right? I just want to make a new friend. Will you be
Yeah, like
my friend?
it's like, you have friends like Jen has been a friend most of my life, and that was easy, and then to think about making new relationships like that now, I'm 38. Like, that's crazy. It's
Right.
just it's just different. It's just different. So it's a new way of making relationships and building those relationships
So
later.
let me ask you, when you create this word, cultivate, how do you use it throughout the year? Are you a person where you put it in front of you, you write it down? How do you make sure you continue to use that word you've chosen throughout 2023?
Yeah, I keep it a couple places. I have like a list of notes in my phone that's a normal to-do list, but at the top of the list, I have it written out, so that whenever I open that, I'll see it. On my vision board at my desk, I have it written. So I put it a couple of places just so, again, it's not like I'm like actively going out and like, what can I do today for this? It's just more that it's always kind of marinating in my brain, if that makes
Right.
sense. So that
Okay.
reminding, because there have been months, all of a sudden I'll go months and I'm like, oh my gosh, I haven't thought about my word in ages. And I do have to come back to it and be like, okay, I want to put this in the forefront of my mind. So that is something that I'm subconscious, because it really is more subconscious, I think, that
For
I'm
sure.
working through the year, if that makes
Cool.
sense.
Yes, and I think this is like the perfect segue because you said, I'm hot and heavy with it in January, and then sometimes there's months that go by, and I'm like, oh my God, I forgot that thing that I said I was going to do, right? And I think this is the perfect time. We're sharing with you on January 1st of 2023. I don't think it could be a more appropriate time because what do people usually do right before January 1st or on January 1st is, this old conversation of they create resolutions. And I don't know about you, I have never been successful creating a resolution.
Nope.
It's just not been something because it's almost like these open-aired promises with no work behind them, right? Like, oh, I want to lose this much weight, or I want to be this active, or I want to create this much money, and it's usually the surface. It's the surface resolution, and that's where it stops. And I really think the reason it doesn't continue with you is because that's where you stop. It's the surface of what that resolution is. And I've been reading a lot, and even from John Gordon, if you haven't ever read him or followed him on Instagram, it's the idea of, first of all, words are important. I've said that a lot of times. Christy and I have said that words are important. And I think resolutions just get lost because there's no, and another great word that Christy used earlier, there's no roots to it. And even if you take it one step further, and especially as entrepreneurs, a lot of times we use the word goals, which is also a great thing. However, a lot of times when people set goals, they don't celebrate the wins along the journey, right? We're an all or nothing. I have to hit that next goal. I have to hit that next goal. And even when we do, we're on to the next goal. And what I've really been looking at in the last year of 2022 is what are my commitments? What are the things I'm saying I'm committing to, not for the year of 2023, but for me, it's every day. And are the commitments I'm saying I'm committed to this work because I want to achieve A, B, and C? And whatever that is for you, I wish that you would just take a second and go, okay, what are the things I'm going to do every day because I want a promotion, or, I want to relocate? What are the things that you're doing? And I don't know how you feel about that, Chrissy, or if you've given any thought to the idea of a resolution versus a goal versus a commitment.
I think that is the best way to put it, Jen, is to really look at the, like, and for me, I'm visual, so I have to write them down, and like resolutions versus goals versus commitment. I think that is such a great way to look at it, because you're right, resolutions are short-lived. They're not rooted. Goals, we just don't always celebrate them along the way, so it's hard to stick to that daily. So it always comes back to that daily commitment, the daily habits. And I think we've both seen that in our businesses. Like, it's always the daily things that's going to bring you to the ultimate goal. So yes, you want to set those goals, the big ones, but what is it daily that you're going to do to get you there? And I just have to touch upon, I don't even know if you realize it, Jen, but how you had just talked about commitment possibly being your word for the year.
Right.
Come back around to how
Yeah.
important commitment is with whatever it is you want to do for 2023. So while yes, you want to set certain goals for the year 100%, but then it's just as important that we break down what are the daily or weekly habits, commitments that we're doing to get there, because otherwise 6 months goes by, 8 months goes by, oh my gosh, it's Christmas again. I didn't even do one thing for my goal this year.
Yeah, right. Yeah, because life doesn't stop lifing, right? Things are going to get in your way. I know that for 2022, it was a challenging year for a lot of people that I know and talk to. Like, it was heavy. Like, I think that's the only word that I can use to describe it. It was heavy. A lot of heavy things happened, and it was challenging. There was just things we didn't expect, but that's going to continue happening. But if you are dedicated to your commitments, that's what's going to get you from day to day. And I think sometimes we actually almost take every word and we blow it up, right? I think even you're probably thinking like commitments, like, oh my God, Jen, like, what do I have to do? How many things do I have to do? And sometimes it's not these huge, amazing, like extravagant things. Sometimes, depending on where you are, like the promotion, sometimes it's just making sure you have a conversation with your boss consistently about what you're trying to achieve. Or, as a mom, you're committed to creating a more calm atmosphere. I know that's something I have to create. So, what am I committed to doing? It doesn't mean it's going to be Pollyanna calm every day in my house. I know there are going to be some hard moments, but am I committed to 20 minutes of quiet time a day? What are the things that are attainable and that are going to move you towards your goal? Don't make commitments so outlandish that you can't achieve them.
Mm-hmm.
Make them so that they match the end goal. And
Yes, and I love that you're saying that, Jen, that it's all it for the most part it is small things. Like, we've seen this in our business growth. But something like I can share right now is something that is new to me, is that I've wanted to write children's books. So the last 2 years has been something that I've been working on, and it's like a series of some books I've been working on. And so something that was a very small commitment, but just making sure that I was sticking to it, was that in the morning when I did my journaling, when I did my reading, I did literally 5 to 10 minutes, not even long. Sometimes it wasn't even fully that, of just working on those books. And it was a couple minutes. It doesn't take time, and then there were times where, or sometimes even months, where I didn't do any of it. But for the better part of the year, I was doing those small steps of something that I don't feel comfortable in or confident, but just doing it anyway. So just saying, it doesn't have to be these major life-altering commitments that you're making to yourself.
yeah, for sure. I mean, they will get you to where you want to be if the commitment is consistent. It goes back to the idea and the word of commitment and consistency. And what do you want to create? And I really want to encourage people. I think it happens a lot. I find myself doing it, especially scrolling on social media, but don't compare your commitments and your goals to other people. If there are people on social media that inspire you and you want to achieve what they have, that's amazing. But talking about happiness, The quickest way to drain your happiness is comparing your achievements with other people rather than being inspired by other people's achievements.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we were joking about it before we got on here. If what doesn't bring you happiness and joy is decorating your house with the matching colored napkins and a new table setting every day, but you see it and you're envious of the other people, unfollow that person. That is not creating your own happiness. It is literally stealing your joy. It is amazing to look at. That's super cool, but that is not me. And that is not what brings me joy. So find the things that bring you happiness and bring you joy. And your goals, your commitments, your consistency, those are going to bring you through 2023. So you can sit there next year and go, my word is achievement, or my word is level, or 2 words, level up, whatever it is, because you've created so much success in 2023. But just remember, success is different to everybody. That also can't be compared.
So
Christie,
true.
I know that we had talked about it on here as we're kind of wrapping up, but I think January, even though 2022, you know, we're kind of wrapping it up, but January itself can be a very exciting time for a lot of people, but it can also be challenging. And I feel like in the last couple of weeks, we've seen a lot of things that have been heavy. And I want to remind you, especially as we started talking, and Christie is one of the kindest, happiest people. Think of those people in your life, the people that you think are always happy and are always kind and are always giving to other people, because I have seen most times that those are the people suffering in silence. And I want to encourage you in 2023, maybe make it a commitment to reach out to the happy people in your life. Just check in on them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, we've seen that, you know, these like keeping our relationships alive with, especially having come out of quarantine and COVID life and so much on social media, and just making sure that we're really truly connecting with people, cultivating relationships.
Yeah, cultivating. Yeah. And I think, but your other word is good, like truly connect with people. Let's stop being social, social surface. I feel like that's what it is. It's social media surface.
Yes. And also in response, like if you're struggling, don't just answer with, yeah, things are great. Like answer honestly. And it's not like you have to like air all your baggage, but just like, it's kind of a tough moment right now, and if it leads to more of a conversation, it leads to it. But, be honest in your own responses too. And that's definitely something I've had to work on. I tend to always answer just like, yeah, fine. Things are great.
Well, I think that goes back to being a mom, right? And the ideas of we're supposed to have it all together. We're supposed to know what we're doing. So when people ask us, how's it going? We answer with these are great versus it's fucking terrifying. And these kids have been home for a week from school vacation and I'm about to rip my hair out. I think it's okay to have those conversations. And I'm not saying, I love my kids, but you know what? There's moments where I just don't like them.
And it's hard, and it's circling back around to the very beginning, and you talked about that vulnerability, and that's really where the connections grow with each other.
Exactly. And I think that's a great place for us to stop, because I truly hope that someone out there, we connected with you today, and we are going to be doing this. Our first podcast is shared on January 1st and every Saturday going forward. So I hope that we get to connect with you and a lot more listeners in the future. And thank you, Christie, for taking this adventure on with me and leaping into the unknown as usual.
Yes, here we go.
All right. Happy New Year. And you know what? It's official. My word is commitment.
There we go. It's done.
All right. Thanks.
All right. Bye, guys.